What if I told you that the greatest empire in history was built not by politicians, but by engineers who turned war into a mathematical equation? The Roman military machine ran like clockwork, grinding entire civilizations not so much with fury as with cold calculation and technological superiority. The legions did not simply defeat their enemies on the battlefield, they broke their very will to resist, using tools that seemed like magic to the barbarians. Behind every triumph were not only muscles, but also ingenious inventions that were thousands of years ahead of their time. We are used to seeing chaotic battles in movies, but the reality of Roman combat was more like a giant industrial conveyor belt of death. It was a system where every detail, from a nail in a sandal to a giant siege tower, had its own specific purpose and was perfected. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how the Romans used simple physics to force their enemies to drop their weapons before the hand-to-hand combat even began. Want to know the secret that allowed the Romans to disarm their enemies from a distance without even touching them? The pilum was not just a spear, but a complex technological device designed to solve a specific tactical problem on the battlefield. Unlike the ordinary spears of the time, which could be thrown back, the pilum was created as a strictly disposable weapon. Its design consisted of a long wooden shaft and a thin iron rod ending in a small but extremely sharp tip. The total length of the weapon was about 2 meters, and its weight was perfectly balanced for a powerful throw at a distance of up to 30 meters. The main feature was the quality of the metal. The rod was made of soft, unhardened iron, and this was not a mistake by the blacksmith, but a stroke of genius. When a legionnaire threw a pilum, all the kinetic energy of the heavy shaft was concentrated in the tiny point of impact of the pyramidal tip. Such a blow easily pierced the enemy's wooden shield, and often the armor behind it. But the most interesting thing happened immediately after hitting the target, when physics came into play. Under the weight of the shaft dragging along the ground, the thin iron rod bent, turning the weapon into an awkward hook. It was absolutely impossible to pull such a bent rod out of a shield in the heat of battle. The enemy warrior found himself in a deadly trap. His shield became a heavy and cumbersome burden that prevented him from moving and defending himself. He had to throw away his main means of defense and remain virtually defenseless in front of the wall of advancing legionnaires. If the pilum did not hit the shield but fell to the ground, its soft shaft would still be deformed by the impact with the ground. This ensured that the enemy would not be able to pick up the Roman weapon and throw it back at the legionaries. Thus, each volley of pilums not only inflicted damage, but also deprived the enemy army of its ammunition. Roman tactics called for a massive volley of pilums seconds before the main forces collided. Imagine thousands of heavy spears simultaneously falling on the front ranks of the enemy formation with a terrifying whistle. This moment created gaps in the enemy's defense and sowed panic, disrupting the order of the ranks before the decisive blow. After throwing their pilums, the legionaries immediately drew their swords and charged into the disorganized crowd, already half deprived of their shields. It was like a preparatory artillery strike, only carried out by the infantry itself. There were various modifications of pilums, from light ones for long distances to heavy ones weighted with lead balls for maximum penetrating power. Engineers constantly experimented with attaching the tip to the shaft using wooden pins that broke on impact. This made the weapon even more effective in terms of disabling enemy equipment. The Romans understood that war was primarily a competition of resources and forced the enemy to lose their resources faster. The pilum was a perfect example of how one detail can change the course of history. The production of pila was streamlined and required standardization, which was an achievement in itself for the ancient world. Each legion had its own smithies and workshops where weapons were manufactured and repaired according to uniform standards. This made it possible to supply the army with huge amounts of ammunition, regardless of where it was located. The logistics of supplying the legions with iron and wood for pilums was a complex operation, but it was this ability to mass-produce complex items that gave Rome a strategic advantage. Interestingly, the design of the pilum evolved along with the changes in Rome's enemies and their protective equipment, When opponents began to use stronger shields, the Romans lengthened the iron rod to ensure penetration. This constant improvement of weapons speaks to the high level of military science and analysis of combat experience. Roman engineers were not afraid to change traditions if it promised greater efficiency in killing enemies. The pilum remained in service with the legions for centuries, becoming one of the most recognizable symbols of Roman military power. The effectiveness of this weapon was so high that many barbarian tribes tried to copy it, but rarely achieved the same quality. The secret lay not only in the shape, but also in the metallurgical technology possessed by Roman craftsmen. The ability to combine a hard tip with a soft shaft required a deep knowledge of the properties of metals. It was a weapon created by a civilization that put science at the service of conquest. Do you think the pilum can be considered the first example of high-tech disposable weaponry in history? I would be very interested to hear your opinion, so please write about it in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on reviews of other historical artifacts. Are you ready to learn the truth about the sword that shed more blood than any other cold weapon in antiquity? The gladius, a short Roman sword, seemed completely unremarkable in appearance compared to the long and impressive blades of the Celts or Germanic tribes. It rarely exceeded 60 centimeters in length, which provoked ridicule from Rome's enemies when they first encountered it. However, this ridicule quickly turned to horror when the barbarians encountered the legionaries in close formation. The gladius was not a tool for duels or beautiful fencing, but a specialized weapon for methodical killing in confined spaces. Roman combat doctrine was based on close formation, where each soldier covered his neighbor with his shield. In such a crush, when the bodies of warriors were pressed against each other, it was physically impossible to swing a long sword. Barbarian warriors accustomed to sweeping, slashing blows found themselves at a disadvantage as their long blades got stuck in the palisade of shields. The Roman, however, hiding behind his scutum, used the gladius for short, sharp thrusting attacks. He needed only a few centimeters of space to inflict a fatal wound. The shape of the blade was perfectly suited for stabbing. The wide blade narrowed to a long and incredibly sharp point. This profile allowed the sword to easily penetrate chainmail or thick leather armor, causing deep internal damage. Even a light thrust to the opponent's torso or thigh was often fatal due to the width of the wound channel. The gladius acted as a wide bayonet that could be instantly returned to its original position for the next strike. This allowed the legionary to conserve energy and remain behind his shield. The hilt of the gladius was made of bone or wood and had an anatomical shape with notches for the fingers for a secure grip. The spherical pommel served as a counterweight, providing perfect balance for the weapon in the fighter's hand. This was critically important, as in a protracted battle, fatigue in the wrist could cost a soldier his life. Roman instructors forced recruits to practice stabbing blows on wooden posts for hours, bringing the movements to automaticity. Chopping blows were considered a sign of unprofessionalism and were only allowed in extreme cases of pursuing a fleeing enemy. The Spanish origin of this sword, known as the gladius hispaniensis, speaks to the Romans' ability to adopt the best from their enemies. After encountering Spanish tribes, the Romans appreciated the quality of their steel and the effectiveness of their blades, and immediately introduced the innovation into their army. They improved the forging technology and created their own version, which became the standard for centuries. The steel for gladiuses underwent complex processing, combining the hardness of the blade with the elasticity of the core. This prevented the blade from breaking when striking hard objects. The gladius sheath was hung on the right side, not the left, as was customary among most peoples. This was also dictated by the peculiarities of formation combat and the presence of a large shield in the left hand. It was faster and more convenient to draw the sword with the right hand from the right hip in tight quarters, without the risk of catching a neighbor or one's own shield. Every detail of the equipment was designed to work as part of the legion's unified mechanism. The gladius was an extension of the soldier's arm, a deadly sting hidden behind a wall of shields. The psychological effect of using the gladius was terrifying for Rome's enemies, who were accustomed to other types of wounds. The Greek historian Livy described the shock of the Macedonians at the sight of their comrades' bodies mutilated by Roman swords. Severed limbs and deep penetrating wounds demoralized the enemy army even before the outcome of the battle. The Romans did not hesitate to use this cruelty as a tool of intimidation. For them, effectiveness was more important than the nobility of combat. Despite its modest size, the gladius required excellent physical training and composure. The legionnaire had to let the enemy get close, look him in the eye, and strike at the right moment. This required the iron discipline for which the Roman army was famous. In the chaos of battle, when people were screaming and dying all around, the Roman formation worked as a single organism, bristling with thousands of short stings. The gladius was the instrument of this collective will. Over time, the shape of the gladius changed, becoming shorter or altering the curvature of the blade. But the principle of its use remained unchanged. It was a symbol of an era when Rome conquered the world by fire and sword. It was the weapon of professionals who turned war into a craft. Its simplicity and lethality made it legendary. Do you think modern soldiers could show the same discipline in close combat using only short blades? In the next chapter, you will learn about the secret weapon that transformed Rome from a land power into a sea power in a single day. What I'm about to show you was forbidden by the laws of marine physics, but the Romans built it anyway. At the beginning of the First Punic War, Rome was completely helpless at sea against the powerful Carthaginian fleet. The Romans had neither experienced sailors, nor a tradition of shipbuilding, nor an understanding of naval maneuvering tactics. Carthaginian ships were faster, their crews were more skilled, and it seemed that the outcome of the war was a foregone conclusion, not in Rome's favor. But Roman engineers accomplished the impossible, turning their main weakness into a crushing advantage with the help of one strange device. They invented the corvus, or raven, a massive boarding ramp with a heavy iron spike at the end, resembling a bird's beak. This structure was mounted on the bow of a Roman quinquereme and could be turned in different directions using a system of ropes and blocks. The ramp was about 11 meters long, and its width allowed 2 legionaries to run shoulder to shoulder across it. The idea was crazy. Instead of trying to outmaneuver the fast Carthaginian ships, the Romans decided to simply catch them. As soon as an enemy ship was nearby, the Raven would crash down onto its deck. The iron spike pierced the enemy's deck planks under its own weight, firmly locking the 2 ships together into a single platform. At that moment, all the Carthaginians' advantages in speed and seamanship instantly disappeared. The naval battle, in which the Romans were novices, turned into a land battle in which the legionaries were unmatched. Heavy Roman infantry rushed across the bridge onto the enemy ship, sweeping away lightly armed sailors and rowers. It was like storming a fortress wall, only the fortress was rocking on the waves. The Carthaginians were in complete shock when they first encountered this technology at the Battle of Milas. They were used to rams and complex maneuvers, but did not expect their ships to be simply captured by brute force. The Romans essentially abolished naval combat, replacing it with their favorite infantry slaughter on wooden decks. The crews of Carthaginian ships surrendered in panic when they saw their comrades being destroyed by armored legionnaires. In one day, Rome transformed from a land power into the master of the Mediterranean Sea. However, this ingenious invention had a dark side that is often forgotten. The massive corvus mounted on the bow of the ship severely disrupted its balance and stability. In stormy weather, such ships became extremely dangerous for the crews themselves and often capsized. The Roman fleet lost hundreds of ships and thousands of men, not in battles, but in storms, partly due to the weight and windage of these boarding bridges. This was the price that had to be paid for technological breakthrough. The use of the corvus required a high degree of coordination between the ship's captain, the crew operating the mechanism, and the soldiers. It was necessary to calculate the moment of approach precisely in order to lower the bridge without missing the target or breaking the structure. This required new training methods and a complete rethinking on the part of naval commanders. The Romans learned on the fly, paying for their mistakes with their lives, but they stubbornly stuck to their guns. They did not adapt to the sea, they forced the sea to adapt to them. Over time, as the Romans gained experience in navigation, they abandoned the use of the corvus. Ships became more seaworthy, and crews learned to win using traditional methods of ramming and maneuvering. But at a critical moment in history, this engineering crutch saved the Republic. It allowed Rome to survive and defeat a stronger enemy by thinking outside the box. It was a triumph of engineering audacity over centuries-old traditions. The history of the Corvus is an example of how one detail can completely change the rules of the game at a strategic level. The Romans did not copy the enemy's tactics. They created conditions in which the enemy's tactics ceased to work. They moved the battlefield into their comfort zone, using mechanics where others relied on skill. It was a lesson in adaptability that has been included in all military history textbooks. We often see examples in history where technological imperfection is compensated for by tactical ingenuity. The Corvus was an ugly, dangerous, and clumsy device, but it did its job 100%. It gave Rome time to learn how to be a maritime power. Without this strange bridge with a spike, the history of Europe could have taken a completely different path. If you enjoyed this description of incredible Roman ingenuity, be sure to like this video. Your support helps us find even more amazing facts from the past. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos about life in ancient Rome. Want to know the secret that allowed the Romans to kill enemy commanders from a distance of several hundred meters? The Roman army was known not only for its swords, but also for its advanced artillery, the crown jewel of which was the scorpion. This small, torsion-based projectile weapon worked like a giant crossbow, but its power came not from the flexibility of the bow, but from the energy of twisted bundles of sinew or horsehair. Roman engineers used the laws of physics to accumulate enormous potential energy in a compact mechanism. The scorpion was a high-precision weapon designed for accurate firing at enemy forces. The arrow or bolt fired from the scorpion had tremendous penetrating power, capable of piercing shields and armor. At a distance of 300 to 400 meters, this weapon retained its lethal force and high accuracy. Roman artillerymen could select individual targets in the enemy ranks, knocking out standard-bearers, officers, or the most active warriors. The sudden death of a commander from an invisible arrow threw the enemy army into chaos. Scorpions were often set up on high ground or flanks, creating death zones that the enemy was afraid to enter. Each legion had about 60 such machines in its arsenal, which allowed it to create a dense and continuous barrage of fire. The Scorpion's rate of fire reached 3 to 4 shots per minute when operated by a coordinated team of 2 people. One soldier aimed the weapon and pulled the trigger, while the second pulled the bowstring using a special winch. The mechanism was equipped with a system of gear racks and stops, which facilitated loading and increased safety. The clatter of the scorpions in action was one of the characteristic sounds of Roman battle. The psychological impact of this weapon was no less important than the physical damage it caused. The bolt flew at such a speed that it was almost impossible to see it in flight and dodge it. Enemy soldiers simply fell dead for no apparent reason, which caused panic and a feeling of defenselessness. No amount of bravery could save them from the cold calculation of Roman ballistics. Scorpions demoralized the enemy, forcing them to press themselves to the ground and lose their offensive momentum. Maintaining these machines required special knowledge and skills, which is why artillerymen were considered the elite of the legion. They had to be able not only to shoot, but also to repair complex torsion mechanisms in the field. Adjusting the tension of the wire beams required a musical ear. The sound of a strike on a taut rope was used to determine the uniformity of tension on both sides. If the balance was disturbed, the accuracy of the shot dropped sharply. These were the first professional sniper engineers in history. The compactness of the Scorpion allowed it to be used not only in field battles, but also in the defense of camps and on ships. Lightweight models could be carried by hand and quickly repositioned depending on the course of the battle. This made Roman artillery mobile and flexible, capable of supporting the infantry with fire where it was most needed. The Romans understood the importance of firepower superiority and spared no expense in the production of these machines. During the siege of fortresses, scorpions were used to clear the walls of defenders, covering the work of siege towers and battering rams. No defender could stick his head out from behind the battlements without risking a bolt to the head. The accuracy was such that an experienced crew could hit a viewing slit or an unprotected limb. This allowed the Romans to suppress resistance with minimal losses to their assault groups. The Scorpion was the embodiment of the Roman approach to warfare: technology, discipline, and deadly efficiency. They turned killing from a distance into a science, calculating trajectories and tension forces. For the barbarians, it was incomprehensible sorcery against which there was no defense. The Roman death machine worked flawlessly, grinding down anyone who dared to challenge it. Engineers constantly improved the design, replacing wooden frames with metal ones for greater reliability and power. Models with magazine-fed arrows and automatic cocking, known as polyballistae, appeared. Although they were complex and expensive, their very existence speaks to the level of technical thought in Rome. Ancient artillery reached its peak of development in the legions. Did you know that the principle behind the Scorpion and the modern sniper rifle is the same? To take out key figures? In the next chapter, we'll look at something that wasn't a weapon of attack, but the very foundation of the Roman wall. The Roman shield, or scutum, was not just a means of passive defense, but a real striking weapon in skilled hands. It was a large curved rectangle that covered the legionnaire from shoulders to shins, creating an almost impenetrable barrier. Its construction was revolutionary for its time. It was made of thin wooden slats glued together crosswise. In essence, the Romans invented plywood thousands of years before its modern appearance, which made the shield incredibly strong and flexible, yet light enough to carry. The curved shape of the scutum allowed it to cover the soldier's body, protecting not only the front, but also partially the sides. It also helped deflect enemy blows. Swords and spears slid off the rounded surface without causing direct damage. In the center of the shield was the umbo, a massive bronze or iron knob that served as protection for the hand. But the umbo also had an offensive function. In close combat, the legionnaire would strike the enemy's face or chest with it, stunning and knocking him off his feet. The edges of the shield were edged with metal, which prevented it from splitting under cutting blows and allowed the shield itself to be used as a blunt blade. A blow with the lower edge of the scutum to the enemy's legs, or with the upper edge to the chin, could instantly knock the enemy out of action. In tight formations where it was impossible to swing a sword, this fighting technique was extremely effective. Legionnaires learned to use their shields as diligently as their swords, turning defense into offense. The scutum was a key element of famous Roman formations such as the tortoise, testudo. Soldiers closed their shields above their heads, creating a solid roof that protected them from arrows, stones, and javelins. This living fortress could move slowly but inexorably toward the walls of an enemy city or through a hail of shells. Discipline and standardization of shield sizes allowed for the creation of perfect geometric shapes out of people and wood. The surface of the scutum was covered with leather and canvas, and then brightly painted with the emblems of the Legion and Jupiter's lightning bolts. This served not only as decoration, but also as a means of identification on the battlefield, as well as a psychological weapon. The sight of a united wall of identical shields instilled in the enemy the idea of the indestructibility of the Roman machine. Each shield had a cover to protect it from moisture during marches. As wet wood became heavy and lost its strength, the scutum weighed about 10 kilograms, which required the legionnaire to be in excellent physical shape. It was impossible to hold such a weight at arm's length for hours, so it was held horizontally by the handle in the center, pressing it against the shoulder and torso. This allowed the load to be distributed and the weight of the body to be used for thrusts and blows. In battle, the legionnaire literally threw himself at the enemy with the full weight of the shield, knocking him over. Inside the formation, the scutums overlapped each other, creating a double layer of protection at the joints. The legionnaire on the right was partially covered by his neighbor's shield, which strengthened the sense of camaraderie and interdependence. A lone fighter was vulnerable, but the formation was unbreakable. Losing a shield in battle was considered the greatest shame, as it endangered the lives of comrades. Interestingly, the design of the scutum changed from oval to rectangular, optimizing it for the tasks of a dense formation. The rectangular shape allowed for a denser wall without gaps, which was critical in repelling massive attacks. Roman engineers showed pragmatism here as well, cutting out everything unnecessary for the sake of functionality. It was an instrument of total war. The plywood structure was so strong that the shield could withstand even a direct hit from a heavy javelin, provided it did not pierce through it. The Romans trusted their protection, which allowed them to remain calm under fire. The scutum was their home on the battlefield, the only barrier between life and death. Thus, the scutum was not just a piece of wood, but a complex composite product and a universal weapon. It symbolized the Roman way of warfare, Methodical, collective, and technological, the Legion began with the shield. Intriguing hook. Guess how long it took the Roman army to march across the entire known world? The answer lies not in the general strategy, but in the footwear of ordinary soldiers. Caligae, the famous Roman military sandals, were perhaps the most underrated but critically important element of the empire's success. They were not just shoes, but a high-tech product for their time, designed for endless marches on any road or off-road terrain. Without reliable caligae, the legions simply could not have been in the right place at the right time. The design of the caligae was a complex system of leather straps cut from a single piece of durable oxide. This open structure provided excellent ventilation, which was vital in the hot Mediterranean climate. The soldiers' feet did not sweat, and water quickly drained and dried after crossing fords, preventing fungus and calluses. This allowed the feet, the main engine of the infantry, to remain healthy throughout campaigns that lasted for years. The main secret of the caligae was the sole. It was multi-layered and incredibly thick, stitched with dozens of iron or bronze nails with conical heads. These spikes acted as treads on modern all-terrain vehicles or soccer cleats. They provided excellent traction on soil, grass, and mud, preventing soldiers from slipping during battle. In close combat, where stability was crucial, this gave the Romans a huge advantage over barefoot or poorly shod barbarians. The sound of the marching legion, the clatter of thousands of nailed sandals on the stone pavement, instilled terror in the inhabitants of the conquered cities. This sound was a symbol of the inexorable approach of Roman power. The nails also protected the leather soles from rapid wear on the famous Roman roads. A legionnaire could walk thousands of kilometers, only periodically replacing the worn spikes rather than the entire shoe. The lacing system of the caliga was designed to securely fix the foot and ankle, preventing dislocations on uneven terrain. At the same time, the toes remained free for better balance. The Romans understood the biomechanics of walking and created shoes that supported the foot but did not restrict movement. In winter, woolen socks were worn inside the caligae, or they were stuffed with fabric, making them suitable even for hiking in northern regions. It was thanks to this footwear that the legions were famous for their incredible marches. The standard march was about 30 kilometers a day with full equipment, but if necessary, the army could march much further. Mobility was Rome's strategic trump card, allowing it to move forces faster than the enemy could react. Caligae turned the infantry into the rapid response force of the ancient world. The production of millions of pairs of such sandals required huge herds of livestock and a developed leather industry. This once again highlights the economic power of the empire, capable of clothing and shoeing hundreds of thousands of people. Standardization allowed soldiers to get a new pair in any camp, from Britain to Syria. It was the first mass-produced army uniform in history. Sometimes soldiers used the nails on the soles as improvised weapons, trampling fallen enemies. The terrible wounds inflicted by the spiked soles were another argument in brutal hand-to-hand combat. But the main purpose of the caligae was more prosaic, to get the soldier to the battlefield fresh and ready for battle. History knows of cases when the condition of footwear determined the outcome of campaigns. The Romans paid maniacal attention to this issue. Emperor Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus even received his nickname Caligula, boot, in honor of this soldier's footwear, which he wore as a child in a military camp. It is safe to say that the Roman Empire was built on the feet of legionnaires wearing caligae. This was the foundation on which the military machine stood. How important do you think comfortable footwear is in modern life? And can caligae be compared to modern tactical boots? In the next chapter, we will learn how the Romans changed the landscape to suit their needs. The Romans did not simply adapt to the terrain, they rebuilt it. One of Rome's main weapons was not swords, but shovels, pickaxes, and measuring instruments. A legion was not only a combat unit, but also an autonomous construction battalion capable of building a road through a swamp, throwing a bridge across a raging river, or tearing down a mountain. The famous Roman roads were built not for trade, but for war, so that legions could move swiftly across the empire. Construction was carried out with fanatical thoroughness, a multi-layered cushion of stones, sand, and gravel, perfect drainage, and paving with flat slabs. These roads were straight as an arrow, ignoring the terrain, which shortened the route and travel time. For Rome's enemies, this meant that a punitive expedition could appear on their doorstep at any moment, in any weather. The road was a chain binding the conquered provinces. A striking example of engineering audacity was Julius Caesar's bridge across the Rhine. To intimidate the Germanic tribes who considered the river a reliable defense, Caesar ordered a huge wooden bridge to be built in just 10 days. Legionnaires drove piles into the bottom of the fast-flowing river, creating a structure that became stronger under the pressure of the current. The Roman army crossed the river, demonstrated its strength, and returned, dismantling the bridge. This act was a psychological attack. The Romans showed that there were no barriers for them, that nature could not stop them. The Germans were terrified that people were capable of taming the elements so quickly. Engineering worked better than battle here, forcing the enemies to retreat without a fight. The ability to change geography was a strategic advantage. Legionnaires also built canals to transport supplies and dams to change the course of rivers and deprive besieged cities of water. They used hydraulic concrete, which hardened even underwater, creating permanent ports and harbors. Each such construction project strengthened Rome's power and made resistance pointless. Engineers marched at the forefront of the army, clearing the way and securing crossings. Their tools were as important as their weapons. The Roman Empire literally cemented its presence in Europe, Asia, and Africa. We still use the roots laid by these soldier builders. Barracks, aqueducts, warehouses, all of this created the infrastructure that allowed a huge army to be kept in constant combat readiness. Logistics defeated the bravery of the barbarians. The Romans understood that war was won in the rear, through supply and speed. Even today, traces of their work can be seen all over the world. The straight lines of European highways often lie on top of ancient Roman roads. It is a monument to a civilization that believed in order and structure. The engineering genius of Rome turned war into a construction project. Victory was only the completion of a process, begun by surveyors and diggers. Enemies could destroy a legion, but they could not destroy the road along which the next one would come. It was inevitability cast in stone. If scorpions were sniper rifles, then ballistas and onagers were heavy howitzer artillery. The Romans perfected the art of siege warfare, using giant throwing machines to destroy walls and fortifications. The ballista, which worked on the torsion principle, could hurl heavy stones or logs hundreds of meters with devastating force. The impact of a stone projectile weighing several dozen kilograms crushed the battlements, broke through the gates, and destroyed the towers. But most importantly, it killed the defenders' hope. Constant, methodical bombardment, which could last for days and nights, gave the garrison no rest and destroyed the defenses brick by brick. Roman engineers calculated the trajectory so that the stones would fly over the walls and destroy houses inside the city. The onager, or wild ass, was a simpler but no less terrifying weapon. Its single lever with a sling hurled huge stones in a high arc. When fired, the machine bounced so violently that it got its name from the kicking animal. Onagers were used to bombard areas and start fires by throwing pots of flammable mixture into the city. Siege towers were another marvel of engineering. These were multi-story mobile fortresses covered with raw hides to protect them from fire. Inside the tower were infantry units, and on the upper floors were scorpions and archers who cleared the walls before the assault. When the tower approached the wall, a drawbridge was lowered from it, and the legionnaires stormed the city over the fortifications. The Romans also used battering rams suspended on chains inside protected shelters. These turtles were rolled up to the gates or walls, and a heavy log with an iron tip methodically pounded the masonry. The vibration from the blows loosened the stones, causing entire sections of the wall to collapse. To protect against tunneling and sorties, the Romans built complex systems of counterscarps and moats around the besieged city. Caesar's famous siege of Elasia is an example of how the Romans built two walls, one to prevent the Gauls from leaving the city, and the second to protect themselves from reinforcements coming to their aid. The scale of the siege works was astonishing to contemporaries. The Romans could build huge earthen ramps to roll siege towers up to the height of the walls, as was the case during the storming of the Masada fortress. They literally moved mountains to get to the enemy. No walls could save them from Roman engineering. If a city did not surrender, it was doomed to methodical, scientific destruction. It was a war of resources and technology in which the barbarians had no chance. Siege engines were operated by specialized teams and required complex logistics for the delivery of ammunition. Stones for ballistae were often hewn on site to ensure they were the perfect caliber. Roman artillery was the voice of the empire, loud and destructive. It spoke the language of force which all the peoples of antiquity understood. A unique feature of the Roman army was its habit of building a fortified camp, castra, at the end of each day's march. It did not matter whether they were in enemy territory or deep in the rear, whether the soldiers were tired or not. The evening began with shovels. Each legionnaire carried not only weapons, but also entrenching tools. A delabra, pickaxe axe, a shovel, and stakes for a palisade, scutis. In a few hours, a real fort with a deep moat, an earthen rampart, and a wall of stakes would spring up in the open field. The camp was built according to strict standards. Straight streets, a clear layout of tents for each centuria, an assembly area, and a place for the command. A soldier could find his place in any camp of any legion with his eyes closed. This gave the Romans a tremendous tactical advantage. They never spent the night in danger, protected from sudden night attacks. If the battle was going badly, the legion could retreat to the camp as if it were an impregnable fortress, regroup, and continue the fight. For enemies, attacking a Roman camp was suicide. The scutis, a wooden stake with pointed ends, was a versatile element. Soldiers tied them together to create hedgehogs against cavalry or a full-fledged palisade. It was a simple but ingenious tool for mobile fortification. The Romans carried their walls with them. Building a camp was also a way to maintain discipline and physical fitness. A tired soldier, busy with work, had no time for rebellion or fear. This united the group, turning it into a single construction crew. The camp was also a logistics center, a hospital, and a workshop. Here weapons were repaired, the wounded were treated, and supplies were distributed. It was a base that moved with the army, ensuring its autonomy. Many European cities, such as Manchester and Cologne, grew up on the sites of former Roman military camps. The street layout still echoes the grid of the legion's tents. This shows how fundamental this approach was. The Romans understood that security is a process, not a state. They created order out of the chaos of the wilderness every evening, asserting their authority over the territory. No other army in antiquity had such a rigorous system of field fortification. Barbarians slept by the fires, Romans slept behind walls. This difference often cost lives. The shovel defeated as many enemies as the sword. The ability to dig in became the hallmark of the legions. All these weapons and tools would not have worked without a system to unite them. At the end of the 2nd century BC, Gaius Marius carried out reforms that transformed the Roman militia into a professional army. He standardized equipment, tactics, and, most importantly, logistics. It was then that the term Marius mules appeared. This was the name given to legionaries who carried all their belongings on their backs. Marius got rid of the huge supply trains that slowed down the army and made the soldiers carry their own food, tools, dishes, and personal stuff. The weight of the load could reach 40 kilograms. This made the legion incredibly mobile and independent of slow carts. The army could move off-road through forests and mountains, appearing where it was not expected. Professionalism meant that soldiers served for 20-25 years, becoming masters of war. They were not peasants who had been torn away from the plow for the summer. War became their job, their life. This allowed them to hone complex maneuvers and engineering skills to perfection. Marius also introduced the symbol of the legion, the eagle, aquila. The loss of the eagle became a terrible disgrace, which fanatically united the soldiers around their banner. The esprit de corps became a powerful weapon that forced people to fight to the death. The standardization of weapons meant that pila, gladiuses, and helmets were produced by the state and issued to soldiers. Poor people, who previously could not afford armor, could now serve, receiving the best equipment at the expense of the treasury. This gave Rome an inexhaustible resource of manpower. The legion became a modular structure. Cohorts and maniples could operate independently or as part of a large army, performing complex tactical tasks. The controllability of the troops increased many times over compared to the barbarian hordes. The social mobility of the army allowed talented soldiers to become centurions, the backbone of the legion. These experienced officers ensured the continuity of traditions and iron discipline. They were the guardians of knowledge about how to kill effectively. Marcus's reforms created the Roman military machine we know today. All inventions, from the pilum to the onager, were integrated into this system to achieve maximum effect. Rome won not because it had heroes, but because it had a system. Organization defeated chaos every time. It was this professional structure that allowed Rome to hold its borders for centuries, grinding down waves of invaders. It was a triumph of order. The Roman military machine was not just a collection of sharp iron and wooden shields. It was a triumph of intelligence, discipline, and engineering over brute force. Each of the 7 weapons we have examined, from the cunning pilum to the almighty shovel, was part of a unified system aimed at a single result: complete and unconditional victory. The Romans proved that war is a science where no detail is insignificant, and where a nail in a sandal can mean more than the bravery of an entire tribe. Which of these Roman inventions did you find the most ingenious and unexpected? Was it the plywood for shields or the road construction system? Suggest topics for future videos about ancient technologies that you would like to see in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new dives into history.